I'm doing great. It's a wonderful day in my neighborhood. I'm down in Arizona, and it's only 100+ degrees, which I have no idea what centigrade that is, but
Yeah,
it's
well, that's
it's toasty.
toasty. Well, the thing about Arizona is you guys have probably the hardest job for a weatherman or a weatherwoman anywhere because it's the same all the time.
It is,
Sunny is
and
70
they get
is cold.
so excited when the rain comes in. They start tracking 10 days out.
Because there's something else to talk about.
Oh yeah, just something to talk about.
Yeah. We see
So.
clouds over Awatuki. We're not sure what that's going to formulate into. You're like,
Yes,
yeah,
that's exactly
one
right.
cloud, one cloud.
Yeah.
Hey, well, thank you for joining us for this podcast. You are a well-known expert in the world of putting systems in place, and you come from a bit of a different market than my listeners normally listen to, which is exactly why I asked you to join us, because I want the people in this cabinet maker profit system community to hear new ideas from places they may not have expected it. So I'll stop for a second. Al, can you tell us who you are and why you would be talking to the cabinet makers, architectural millworkers, and furniture makers?
Okay, before you hit pause, all you people out there, and dial off because he said I didn't know you, I actually do know, and I did work with a cabinet millwork company, one company, so that makes me an expert
Of
at that.
course.
Just so you know, I actually know what a Morbidelli machine is and a CNC and a whole bunch of other things that I thought I would never learn. But starting with me, I was the third generation in a family plumbing, heating, cooling business on Long Island, New York. For those who know where JFK Airport is in New York, that's where I was, Long Island. And pleased to say that it was a crazy, crazy business. And but we got our systems in place so where we could take control. And now the fourth generation, my
Wow.
middle brother, yep, he's my nephew is in the business now, and you really can't move a business from place to place unless you have repeatable systems that make it work. And that was really what I said about. But the joke of it is I know I've been known now as the operation guy, the staffing guy, the planning guy, but that really wasn't who I was, Dominic.
No?
I was the sales guy. I was a marketing guy, and I was really good at sales, and my company was really good at blowing them up. So I had to stop and fix the holes in that problem. So that's why I got really good at it. And because I know now, I've worked with a lot of different contracting things that I didn't do. Plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical is what my
Mhm.
family does today. But contracting businesses are all the same. And you got to answer the phone right, you got to dispatch right, you got to get text right. In your case, the fact that your machine can make 1,000 cuts really quick is really good, except the blade is wrong. Now you have 1,000 of those bad pieces out there.
Yeah.
And what I think is sprayed right versus what Dominic thinks is sprayed right are two different things until you take it from the subjective or opinion down to objective about this is what the board should look like
Mm.
when you put that cabinet up, and how do you put it up, and how many screws do you use, and the length of the screws. Now this sound like how far am I dialing it down, but this is what sabotages you, your team, and of course the customer is the one that gets the tracks on their back from being mishandled. And
Yeah.
ultimately it's all about profit.
Yeah. It's great. What's interesting is that you're speaking our language. Everybody that's listening to this is the owner of a company. And that long screw problem, that comes up at the end of the manufacturing process when everything's done nice and suddenly you have a dimple on the other side of an otherwise finished piece of work. And I guess what we're here to talk to you about today is the processes and systems that we put in place so those things don't happen. So there's no rework or deficiencies, etc.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you that you can end it. No. The idea is that I use the plumbing is, imagine you have a bathtub full of profits and the drain is wide open because of the callbacks and the reworks and the mistakes that you make. So our goal is to slow that process down where it goes from, instead of a gusher down there, to a trickle. And that's what really makes you money, because you can't work on new work if you're always busy with rework.
Right.
And that is a process. So I worked with this company, a really fine young fellow, and literally we wrote out the boxes from start to finish, from the design process, because if it's not designed right, nothing goes well.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't manage customer expectations in the sales process, it doesn't go well. If you don't turn it into the production department and it gets on the schedule, doesn't go well. And you can follow what I'm talking now out to the line. Somebody's got to order that stuff. You could have the best design in the world. If you don't have the wood or the right wood, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So there's all of these things that fit. So we literally took it. Unfortunately, I can't use this example anymore, but if you remember old Christmas lights,
Yes.
if one bulb blew, they all blew out.
The whole thing went. Yes.
Yes. And so that's the same thing for you guys is you have to define step by step by step so that you get to the end you want. Because these little things were blowing it up. That's why the paint room was always a problem.
Oh,
You
the
know,
paint
yeah.
recipes and the inconsistency on finishing, and that's where it becomes subjective or a matter of opinion. If you don't
Yeah,
have
I
your
think
sample board and the sample board's not agreed to by the designer, the client, the architect, you're never going to fix it because
never.
somebody's opinion is that it's not the right color or the right
That's right.
texture or finish.
You know, working with designers, I don't know how much you guys do, but most of you guys work with designers as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Years ago, even in the heating business, I had baseboard heating, which is a pipe running through the thing.
Yeah.
And I supplied it, but the decorator said, that's not the color white that I want. And I said, well, what color white would you like? She goes, ice white. I go, just out of curiosity, how many whites are there? She goes, 37 whites.
Yeah.
And so I realized in a hurry that, you know, in the future, we were just going to put in the baseboard, you could paint it any color you want. But at the end, the job is not done or not even close if you don't understand the customers, how they perceive the outcome to be. You know, the cabinetry and the fixtures and the handles and all of these pieces and how you hang it and when you hang it and how you do it and how you stand behind it. So this process that I quickly outlined, it goes a lot further than that.
Yeah.
But you've got to get it lined up. Even when somebody walks into you, if you have a design center, which many people do, is
Yeah.
yeah, if you're ignored in that design center, how well do you think the sale's going to go? So teaching your people in the design center how to build sales momentum instead of destroying it is no different than a, you know, plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical, or roofing companies that I've worked with, or any of them. They're all contracting businesses pretty much.
Yeah.
I actually worked with a condo builder in Montreal.
Ah.
I've never built a condo in my life, but it was frighteningly the same. The sales, the marketing process, and how these steps go and what is delivered was affected until we put together what I would call a flow. So it's a series of boxes, if you think
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah.
for the process. And then we were able to define it in writing, which are operating manuals. So there's a manual for each thing. And your company has got to have a set of boxes in your org chart that defines, not the fancy titles, not, I don't really care who's CEO, CIO, CIT,
Yeah.
CFO. It's all great for your ego, but it's the boxes that it takes to run your company. And then each box needs to be defined as to the activities.
The roles and responsibilities, the role clarity. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Is this where the 7 powers come in that you've written about?
Yes, yeah. You know, my father was a serial entrepreneur, and he had his boys. I being the youngest at the time, and still am.
Yeah.
Basically, the three of us were allowed to go into my dad's meetings, and
Really?
we were sitting in the back as teenagers. And the
Hmm.
only rule of thumb was don't say anything. Write down your question. At the end, I will address all of it. So it was really progressive. But we were in multi-state real estate. We owned a set of ice cream stores, multi-chain of liquor stores, radiant heat manufacturer.
Wow.
Yeah, it's computer software. But the golden goose was always the plumbing, heating, cooling company, which again today does electrical.
Mhm.
That was what we had to make sure we took care of. But we were always in. And what my father used to like to say is that when people start to tell you that their business is different, my father would go like this. He goes, "It's about that different." And what he meant was these certain principles, to which I documented, there are 7 principles that you need to know running any company, but especially a contracting company. And I can attest to that this works in the millwork cabinetry industry because I have done it.
Well,
It is
let's.
planning. Yeah,
Are you
planning.
hitting these things? Let's say
Yep,
them out loud because people are driving or they're walking their dogs, doing whatever they're doing while they're listening to a podcast or perhaps watching us as a video. So let's run
got it.
through the 7 points and then ask you to go back and define them. So number 1 is planning.
Planning power. Second one, operating power, staffing power, sales power, sales coaching, then financial power and marketing power. So there are 7 powers that you need to master. I
Hmm.
will tell you, I have worked with some of the best contractors, both in Canada and the United States. And here's what I can tell you. No one is a 10 out of 10. But here's what is the case. Any successful contractor cannot be a zero. So if you can't make the phone ring, you're going to go out of business. If you don't know how to count the money, you're going out of business. If you don't know how to create sales, you're going out of business. If you don't know how to make staff, you're going out of business. So the idea is to systematize this and make it less people specific and make it more repeatable. So let me dig in a little bit more about what planning power is. Planning power is taking a master project list. And typically when I work with people, it's maybe 100 to 125 projects. Some of them are just good habits. What do you do about steps of corrective action? The first time they mess up, the second time, the third time, the fourth time. Just delegation, learning how to delegate. I was not a delegator. I was a dumper. No, I was a dumper.
You just dumped it and
take care of that. Yeah, you take care of that. And of course it was miserable and I hated you for messing it up, but it was really my fault, because I never took the time to delegate. So there's a process. So of these 100, 125 projects, some of them are projects like getting your trucks uniformly set up, getting your warehouse lined up so the production lines are set up, building in maintenance into your production line so you don't make 1,000.
Ever important.
Yeah, the 1,000 bad things. So these would be reasonable to put on that master project. So think of it as a funnel. The top of the funnel is filled with all these projects and habits that you would hope to do in the next 3 to 5 years. We can't work on that many. So we take those projects and habits and we boil them down to what I call the 30. And the top 30 is it either fixes the biggest problem or challenge. So you're doing a lot of reworks, you're making bad cuts, they're spraying bad, got to fix that. Or profitability and sales. What product are you not selling today that you should be selling? You may sub out your install because you don't think you can ever learn how to do it well, instead of controlling the whole process and making one call for the customer, which is a unique selling proposition, if you can do it right. And so those are kinds of reasons that you would go from the big list to the 30 list. That said, the 30 list is designed to be something you would knock out. So we're here today.
Right.
And a year from now, how well did we do at knocking out those 30s? Because you said they'll fix the biggest problem or challenge or greatest chance to grow and be profitable. That said, we take the same filters one more time to that 30 list, fix the biggest problem or challenge, greatest chance to grow and be profitable, and we get it down to our top 5. And when you arrive at the top 5, it should be posted up, not just for you, but for everybody else, so they know what 5 things you're working on.
So hold on, you're talking about communicating or telling the rest of the company, these are the big 5 things we're working on. On-time delivery or minimizing rework or getting our recipes right in the spray booth, whatever they are.
Answering the phone right, getting to sales calls the right time, setting up the windows properly, getting out to the job with everything we need to be able to quote the price correctly and do all the measurements.
Right.
Because if you didn't measure it right, it's not going right. And so, these are the things that you need to attach to. So that top 5, what it says though is, the reason why I want it up on a big whiteboard, even though today you can do digitally, is because it's important for the company to know what you're doing to address these problems and challenges and where the growth and opportunity is. But it's really for you, Mr. Owner, because I know you're going to be crazy all week and you're not going to change a thing. Working in the business all of the time, as the great book E-Myth said years ago, Mike Gerber.
Love that book.
If you're only working in the business and never on it, nothing's going to improve. That was really a big takeaway for me. And that's when I realized what I was doing was just dealing with the same fires every day and never doing any firefighting.
Just groundhog.
So the top 5, yes. And the top 5 is where you change that equation. Because every week, no matter how crazy it is, you said this would fix your biggest problem and challenge and greatest chance to grow and be profitable. So what is a better use of your time? And the answer is nothing. Nothing is better use of your time.
Nothing is a better use. Like, this is the most important thing you can do.
So a part of your crazy week, you have to make some progress, and they will be watching because it's what you want, why you want it, and then the status.
Yeah.
And if they don't see the status moving, they know what they know. That this was just a good idea. You might have went to
the boss read a book. There's no, you've got this new coach, this new consultant. Wait till that passes. Blah blah blah. Hey,
Exactly.
Let me ask you something, because one of the pieces of feedback I get, and I'm sure you get this as well, is when guys like you and me walk into a company and we say, we want to talk about how you have your meetings, automatically everybody's neck muscles have stopped working. Meetings. Oh, God. We have horrible meetings. They take forever. They don't go anywhere. And yet, and I'm gonna assume this is what you say because this is what I say. I want you to have more, better, shorter meetings than you currently have. Do you have that same approach?
I do. I do. As a matter
Yeah.
of fact,
Okay.
years ago, once we created the manuals, part of the thing was having meetings, which we were always too busy to have meetings, which is kind of idiotic
But
because
that's where you
communications only
communicate these things you're talking about. That's where we talk about the whiteboard and moving the, answering customer
yes.
phone calls quickly, etc.
Everyone in the company who has a manual has a reason to be at a meeting. Why do we hate meetings is a great question here, Dominic. The reason we hate meetings is because we confuse the meetings that we go to at our town hall, our house of worship, our community building, because it's a reason to get together to eat donuts, drink coffee, talk about the same idiotic thing that you will be talking about next week and next week and next week. No, there's an agenda, a very short agenda
Right.
that is known ahead of the meeting. You have the meeting, you stay on the agenda, you start on time, you end on time. I've got 10 meeting guidelines, and it's a pretty thick book that I just shared with another podcaster. It's that important
I
to
agree.
have these meetings, but short meetings that are participatory, not a lecture.
Yeah. So it's a short meeting where the owner or the person running the meeting is directing the meeting.
Yes.
Maybe Al, if you're in my meeting, you've got 30 seconds to make your point, and then we move on to the person sitting next to you. And we go all around the room. Fast meetings, effective meetings. But this top 5 that you were talking about is a consistent challenge that business owners face because they actually know what they want to change, what will have the biggest impact. It's just that business gets in the way of doing business improvement. And it's so much easier to do it if you have these regular meetings with a preset agenda for a set amount of time, and there's a set outcome. And it's very little. They're little meetings, but they're powerful meetings. Yeah.
Short. Which you hit on the main topic here is, do you need more ideas, Mr. Owner, or do you need more implementation? Because I'm betting you need more implementation.
Yeah.
It's what sabotages us all.
Yeah.
But the idea about the top 5 is you're implementing the right this is what planning power is. Working on the right thing at the right time in the right way. So the 3 rights of planning power is that.
The right thing at the right time in the right way.
Yep. And then you will have mastered you're on your way to mastering what planning power is about.
So now we've got operating power. So number 1 was planning power. Number 2
yes, number 1 is always planning power.
Yeah, number 2 is operating power.
So you have an organizational chart, and it really needs to be very flat. The organizational chart is the boxes we talked about, and then it's what activities go on in those boxes. So the policies and procedures that cover 80% of what you do. Mr. Perfectionist or Miss Perfectionist, you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to create the perfect manual, and it will never happen. It is 80% of what goes on day after day that drives you crazy and sabotages you.
Yeah.
If you can handle the 80, the 20 does not throw you. So like we did with the production team, the guy on the floor or the gal on the floor, they know the production things that they need to do in writing. When they get to the spray booth, they know what they need to do. When you're out as a job, as a system, you know what things you have to measure and do. When you turn the plans into the production engineer, they know what they need to do.
They know where the handoff is and who's got what.
Exactly right. And so this is the whole thing about, and even you could do everything right on the production floor, but then you don't store it right on the floor for staging, and you don't get it loaded on the truck correctly.
Yeah.
So by the time it gets to the job, it's a bunch of splinters. That's a problem. And you got to be able to have a manual. So there's even a manual for the delivery driver, so that they know how to do the tie down straps the right way, all these things. So the idea is, and if you write one page, you're already better than the 0 pages that you have today.
Yeah. You know what happens in this industry, that's very interesting you say that, and those of you listening, you're going to start shaking your head, so please keep both hands on the wheel if you're driving, is how many times has your delivery guys come and picked up a set of cabinetry, boxes, casework, and left for the job site, but left something back at the shop?
Yes.
And then what happens? How much just time, money does it cost? So both time and money does it cost for that driver to come back, get the right things, take them back to the job site, because that throws you off a day now. But more importantly than that, now the customer's a little, even if they're not upset, they're a little bit disappointed. And that means they're going to look at everything with a more critical eye. And you've just thrown all of your perfect floor production off. And I think, Al, what you're saying is just have a system. Driver, before you leave, check these things. Do
Yes.
not leave without talking to whoever you say, the foreman, the
There's
charge
a
hand, the lead hand.
checklist that they
Yeah,
sign off on, that exactly what you're saying, for all of the things that have been laid out into the staged areas of your warehouse,
right.
so that the job is pre-assembled, that it's pre-checked, and they're initialing off before they load it up. And then they have to load it up in a way that protects it so that it gets the job in one piece the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. The impact of that one system.
Yes.
And it costs thousands of dollars. That's a profit leak. I mean, we talk about the 8 profit leaks in your business, very similar to some of the things you talk about. But when you talked about the drain, the bathtub drain, the profits are in your business. They're just dripping out. It's death by 1,000 cuts sometimes. And it's
Yes.
relatively
Yes.
easy to go and make those savings or make a little bit more money or save a little bit more money than it is to go and think we just got to sell another $100,000 worth of deals. Money's actually in your business. Just stop it from leaking out.
Yeah, and there's the part that Dominic mentioned too about customer and customer perception is what the end of the job is, not your perception. And so every little thing you do right makes the light bulb brighter in their minds, and everything you do wrong makes the brightness dim.
Yeah.
And you can't have that. And today, when I was younger, it was, if you like what I did, you tell 2 neighbors. If you hated what I did, you used to go tell 20 neighbors. Well, now I'm typing on my keyboard and I'm telling 7 billion people what an idiot you are. Or I'm going to tell 7 billion people, this is the only person you should use for the cabinetry work that you do and you want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So that's operating systems, and operating systems are very important. You can do this in your office, on your whiteboard. You can do it this week, folks. Just go and write down everything that happens to get an order sold, built, out the door, and collected. Just write that on your whiteboard, and that's the system that Al and I are talking about here. What is your operating system? How does your ABC millwork or XYZ cabinets, how does it work?
Yeah. And then, when it gets, obviously I have manuals that I hired, did all these things. But like I said, if you got one page following Dominic's thing and you wrote it on a Post-it note, you are already ahead of where you have nothing. Right now, you actually are giving permission to your staff to do whatever they feel like, and you got to take it. I'm betting you're not liking it.
That's a horrible way to say it, but very accurate. Okay, let's move on to staffing power.
I did live in New York, so I'm slightly direct. Yeah, so staffing is really what I call 3 things: is making your existing people better, finding their holes and fixing it. Because you don't know what they don't know until you actually go and check what they don't know. So if you have them build cabinets in front of you or on the lines or load stuff up, so you've got to find where they have these holes and fix them, because they're just going to repeat the same thing over and over again. And then the second part of this is you hire somebody new. Have you ever been in an interview and here's how it goes? So Dominic, you've built a lot of cabinetry, have you? What's the only answer Dominic's ever going to give me?
Yeah.
Tons of it.
Yeah.
Tons of it.
Great.
Dominic, have you installed cabinetry?
Yes.
The only answer yes. And so now it's not to say that he's lying, but his perception is he worked with his uncle once and they installed cabinetry that his uncle put up in the kitchen, and now he's an expert.
Yeah.
And this goes, by the way, even for your bookkeeper in your office who can, do you understand? Do you know QuickBooks, Dominic?
Yes, I do.
Of course. And you're an expert, I would assume too.
So
we never do any testing on these new people. And so I recommend that there's a written test. And I'm going to have him come in and see what he really does and doesn't know in QuickBooks right away. It's expensive to hire poorly. And so the same thing goes for out on the floor. If I've got some things, I just want to know what they do and don't know. You've got to find and fix the holes on these new experienced people you hire. Ultimately, the third biggest step and why I was able to be freed up is that I learned it was very difficult and very tiring to do this, especially because we were a fast growing company.
Yeah.
We basically hired willing people and provided the skills. Because what you're doing today is hoping that they're experienced and that they will be willing and not likely to do so. You get the whole thing, not the piece you want. And so we learned how to build young, willing people into really great people at all different positions on our company. And manuals and training systems make that difference.
Yeah. So I think you're using the word willingness. I like to use the word attitude. We can hire. Yes. We hire for attitude. Knowledge and skills can be taught. That's why they're written in books. But attitude, that comes from your kitchen table. It comes from, as you grew up as a kid, it comes from how you see the world. And are you saying that their willingness or their attitude is more important than their skill?
Yeah, well, the better you are at training, the more systematic your company is, the more
Right.
you're documented, you can lower the I need the skills and hire more on willingness. And
I love
yes,
it. Yeah, I couldn't
yeah,
agree
instead of
more.
it's exhausting to rewire people. So that's what I just found out years ago. It was actually worse than this. My brother and I would stand in the office. We had 25 techs, but the last two standing were me and my brother Richie at 2 a.m. And we'd have this inane conversation about Dominic. Dominic was the best tech at their company. Are you kidding me? He's mediocre here. And now we've overpaid him because we paid to steal him away from the other company. And finally, we just said, enough. We're just going to build good, young, willing people ourselves and provide the skills. So we built a training center, we
Hmm.
built the manuals, we built the training curriculum, we did all of this stuff. And that's what I've been going all around the country doing, is basically teaching people how to do the same process. And
Wonderful.
that's really the path.
So let's talk about sales process, because we have really two different kinds of listeners onto this show. There's the commercial contractors who do tenant improvements based on the bid process. So commercial
Yep.
bids. They do 15-hour chunks of estimating work and they feed it into this black hole called an RFP process. That's the first kind of sales that happen. The other kind is more on the residential homeowner, DIY, maybe selling direct to consumer, kitchen cabinets, closets, furniture, countertops. There's a slightly different angle here, but selling is selling no matter what we're selling.
Well,
What's your overview of selling power?
to me, selling is all about good communications. And people think it's about talking. It's really about
It's
listening.
about listening. Yes.
Yeah, a couple of key questions that I would always, and that's what I train people on, is, three key questions to get the customer talking to you, because you need to know what we talked about before, is what do they perceive as a good outcome here. So if you're talking about my favorite, of course, in sales is to work with and sell to the end user. So whether they're the homeowner, or it's they're going to be building and fixing and living in this commercial environment. So my company did residential, commercial, and industrial. So I'm familiar with all three.
Mm,
At the end, you have to make and understand why the person that you're selling to cares about that result. And so that really what it comes down to is, Dominic, based on, how long, all things being equal, do you figure you'll be living here in the home? So I've got to have some idea, because that does do some of the things is,
yeah. It's if I'm going to
what
flip it, it's a different answer than if I'm going to retire and die here.
absolutely right. And what's the importance of the quality and having cabinets and the types of hinges, and long-term effect on that. What is something that you hate and don't want to repeat in the kitchen and cabinetry that you've had before in the other homes you lived at? So these are the questions that get them talking to us, because I'm going to be making notes. And when the sale closes, that's what I'm going to be using, is their words, not mine. And that's still, even in the commercial situation, is I recognize that I did have some bid processes. And I'm not, the mistake in sales is that, you want everybody as your customer. No, you need to have the right customer. So you got to get in that, where it tips into sales and marketing, or what I feel are different sides on the same coin.
Right.
But if you can't sell to me, Al, your ideal customer, then how can you sell to 10, 100, a million of Al's? So you have to be really good at sales, in my opinion, before you can become a great marketer, because you've got to be really dialed in on your message.
Mm-hmm.
So the part about it here is there's a sales system, there's a process so as a tech, I would run through the call in a given way so I wouldn't miss steps. What I find is people run sales calls with nothing in the way of a system.
They don't
One
have a
time they
pre-call
start
plan.
here. No,
Yeah.
they have no plan. They ask a couple questions. They don't write down the stuff. They don't do a full survey. They don't take enough tests of what's behind the cabinets and what
Yeah.
they're attaching to. So these are all the things that submarine them. On a commercial bid, is the idea is sales. If you're in a price situation and it's hard to build the value, well, then you better become super efficient at what you do, and you are absolutely a prisoner to callbacks and reworks if you're not ahead of that. And so, as much as whoever you're working for, the GC, general contractor, or whatever, yes, they want a good price. But here's what they don't want: they don't want their job held up, and they don't want the cabinetry arriving and being
Yeah.
taken down. And they can't collect their money if this isn't finished and that the customer loves what they did.
Yeah.
So they all need to know the sales process, just a different angle of it.
Yeah. It's what's interesting about the trade the trade that we talk about here in this community, cabinet makers, is that we're one of the last trades on the job site. So any mistakes that have pushed the job back in the beginning, the guy that's doing site services and putting in plumbing and hydro connections, he's at the very start of the whole subcontracting process. There's lots of wiggle room. Towards the end, all the little one-day mistakes of all the other sub-trades pushes towards the cabinet makers and truthfully the painters and the drywallers and stuff. But it pushes it and everything becomes magnified because we are at that last 10%. And there's a lot of eyes on us.
I have an answer if you're interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, so I worked for general contractors, and being in the plumbing, heating, cooling, we would put our piping up and through the wall and make these holes and do all the stuff. And then the other trade would come in and fill all those holes. And I would complain to the general contractor, and he goes, oh, what can I tell you? And so, I would try to do change orders and never get paid. So finally I changed this equation. Here's what I said is, Dominic, I figured in some extra money if you help me bring this job in on time, which is something I know is important to you. So here's what we need to do is we need to make sure that the holes that I'm going to create, that I'm going to paint, are kept for me, because if not, it's going to slow down my production and I can't give you the refund that you deserve. It totally flipped it. And suddenly the general contractor became my advocate on the job. And so that's what you have to do. So also the other thing too is a GC will call you up and say, we need you to put the plumbing in today. And so you have to run around and all of a sudden you find out there's no wall to install the plumbing on, which is not unlike what you guys, I know it's the same thing you do. So you need to send, when that happens, you need to send a supervisor out to inspect and make sure it's really ready. I actually used to educate contractors that I was working with about this, a picture of this is what is ready. So when I arrive, we can do our work. And again, I had a vested interest for them because they did want to bring this job in on time and for profit and get a rebate for themselves.
Awesome. I like those are great little tricks, Al. Hey, let's move on to after sales power comes sales coaching?
Sales coaching, yeah. So I can, this is like, you're going to give me homework, but you're never going to check it, mom and dad. So sales coaching is, if I did what you asked as a goal, keep coming to work, I love you. Bring me $1 more, and I'm going to share that with you. Bring me $1 less, and I will coach you, but only for so long. That's the essence of sales coaching. And so it's got to be based on whatever your key metrics are. So in the case of Dominic is my salesperson, here's what you projected for material. Here's what you projected for labor. The office measured actual material, actual labor. How close is it? And this is the gross profit that I'm looking for on my install work when the job is done. And so that is how I will pay you on that job. And if you do enough of these jobs where they go green. Now, the problem is a lot of times the sales team is not connected to the fulfillment team, the people on the line, people who do the install, even the people that deliver it. You've got to encompass everybody with a reward that is built into your selling price. And that's where sales coaching comes in. So if I'm just coming to install it, if I bring the job in on time, on budget, with no callbacks, so that's why I'm going to test that the door actually works back and forth and the lazy Susan turns, because now I have a vested interest in this job.
That the molding touches and it's caught.
Yes, yes, that it's touching.
It should
not binding. Yeah, exactly. But you have to have a sales coaching / reward system for people to hit those metrics and continue to hit the metrics.
You know what's interesting here, and I hope people are starting to get this picture, is that we started this podcast episode by saying Al comes from a different industry. But we're talking about cabinet making and furniture making and architectural millwork, but we're really not. We're talking about business. Because we haven't talked today at all about running the CNC better. We haven't talked at all today about doing the things on the shop floor that are specific to cabinet making. We're just talking about efficient, effective production of high quality material that goes to a client and makes them happy. And so it's really about what we started by saying is the business of being a business owner is going back and constantly tweaking and fixing the little things along the way that makes your business better and stopping that leak of profits coming out the bottom. Love it.
Well, I know, because again, I know what a CNC is, and I do know how to make it work better. And I do know about a maintenance schedule. I know a lot of that. So it's not even this wild jump off for the listeners here.
Yeah.
I know everything I'm speaking to about today absolutely applies to you and what you do today.
Yeah, it does. It does. Our businesses are no different. They are businesses that run well. And by the way, the people, ladies and gentlemen, that run this business properly make really good money.
Yes, and they're entitled to it because they do run their business the right way. They treat it like a business, and they do all the steps that make the outcome ultimately the person that has to win is customer first, company second, so that employees and staff and everybody else can be served well. So that's kind of it.
Well, let's
So
talk about
what's
finance power now.
Yeah, so you can do all of everything I've spoken about before and not know what you need to charge. So it's not just me, the technician's money you have to figure in. You have to figure in all of the hours that you pay. So if you take out what I talk about as a 3-column budget
Mm.
is a really good idea about understanding this. So you ask your accountant to give you all the expenses that you had this year.
Hmm.
Trucks, licensing, cost of the machinery, the repair for the stuff on the floor, all of that is all of the cost. That's one column. The second column is what are you going to do different this year than you did last year that's going to move you ahead? So are you increasing your marketing? Are you in the case where you have to replace the trucks that keep breaking down? Do you have to add new machinery to the floor to become more productive?
Hmm.
There's a ton of those things. If you add up those two columns, you just get to what we call break even. So what is the gross profit that you want? And that is how you come up with the most important thing. When I look at a company is top line sales and gross profit. People ask me a lot of time, what about net profit? What about net profit? And I go, if the top line sales aren't there and the gross profit isn't there, there's no reason to look at your net profit. And net profit is really only important when you're going to a bank and looking for a loan or you're trying to sell your company. Otherwise, it's just taxable income, at least in the States it is. So
Hmm. Hmm.
you have to focus on top line. So this is knowing where you are. Ellen Rohr, my good friend, always talks about is we wait for the accounting people to send us a statement to figure out what it is, but that's a driving your financial car by looking out the rear view mirror
Yeah.
versus driving your car looking through the mirror. As you should know the numbers today, what it takes for you to, how well did we do? How sales did we get from our big ticket people? How well did the people do their job? The profitability? How much are we doing in rework?
Yeah.
That is all coming down on the financial page because at the end of it, you need to be at what she calls KFP, known financial position, so that you know where you are. It's like a GPS for
Yeah.
finance.
It has never, I've been coaching now for 18 years. And I remember when I first started meeting business owners to talk about, their business and improvement and what their revenues were. And I would say, so what are your revenues this year? And they'd say, well, we don't know yet. It's going to take a couple months to get it back from my accountant.
Yes.
I thought, what? I mean, you don't even know this last couple months. We really need to know because cash is like breathing for a business. Cash in, cash out. Breathe in,
Yep.
breathe out. And if I try to hold my breath all year plus 3 months to get the report back from the accountant, I'm simply going to suffocate and die.
And also the other thing, because you bring up a really good point here, is I talk about the difference between real world accounting and tax accounting, which is what your accountant does. Tax accounting is important; it keeps you out of jail. Good thing, and
Yeah, there's the thing.
also, but it allows you to keep legal. But their job is really to delay taxes and to minimize taxes. Again, a good thing, but it doesn't help you at all to run your business financially in the moment. So real world accounting is what Brian and I are talking about is you need to have a budget. You need to be plugging those numbers back every day so that you know where you are and where you're tracking and what are your sales, where is the money coming from, where are the expenses, where are the holes, and run your company on percentages rather than just on dollars. So I'll give you a quick example because we're going to turn to
Yeah,
marketing
yeah.
is until you're 10% in marketing, you're really not aggressive. So I would have companies where they were 10 million in sales, they'd spend a million for marketing, come back later on, they've grown to 20 million. And they would complain to me that I've spent 500,000 more. I spent $1.5 million on marketing, but it doesn't seem to be as effective. And I go, because if you stuck with the 10%, you should have been spending $2 million on marketing. And so that's why learning to run your company on percentages and watching the percentages is really where you gain the financial power.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing how these little changes in perception have such a huge impact on the way our business is run. And for most people in business, they actually haven't gone to take business courses in school. They're just kind of doing it by the seat of their pants. They bought some tools, they made a cabinet for their aunt, and then somebody says, you do kitchens? Absolutely. And they made another kitchen, and that was 15 years ago. And now they're running a $3, 5, 7, $12 million cabinetry company on the same logic, on the same things in their head, the same voices in their head that started when they bought that first saw.
You don't have to become a financial guru. You don't have to go back to 5 years of school for this stuff.
No.
Ellen teaches this, baby budget thing really pretty simple, and she's made it as clear as clear. And I've worked with some very bright contractors to those who are not necessarily the brightest, but the ones who get it are the ones who just get in this good habit of budgeting. And you budget at home. I mean, if you're any good, you should be budgeting at home, right? You know how much money you have and how much you can spend, and what are you putting for your retirement. And all of a sudden, that all goes out the window in our business. Why? Why are we doing that? And so financial power is really key, and knowing what you have to sell for. That includes all of the costs, not
All
just
the
the cost for
costs,
the
right?
job, all of the costs. I mean, it was earth shattering to me years ago. We would buy a motor for $30. We'd pay the tech $30, and we figured, oh, look, there's $40 for us at the end. But of course, when we finally did a budget and saw all of the things, the things you don't think about, the medical costs, the truck insurance, the vehicle, I could go on for a
I have
long
staples
time.
and paper clips and the coffee and the hot chocolate with the coffee and
Everything,
everything, right?
everything. Yep, everything,
Coffee in the
including the
office.
hours for
Yeah.
doing reworks, has to all be figured into it. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. And an action item here for our listeners is make sure that you understand your costs, but then add your profit as an expectation on the job so that you send that out with the job. My profit is a line item.
Yes, I mean that's like baking a cake and leaving out too many of the good recipe parts of the cake.
Yeah.
You got to bake it in, my friends. You got to
Yeah.
bake that profit in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. That's financial power. And then we've got this last one here, number 7, marketing power.
Yes. Yep. So Ellen and I believe that there are two positions on a company org chart that an owner never gets to leave. The one we just talked about is financial. It's too important. You don't have to be creating the numbers, but you got to know that they're right. You got to know that you can trust them, and they have to be produced in real time. And marketing is also, if that phone doesn't ring off the hook, and if frankly, the idea of marketing is more calls than you can humanly do in a day. Because if that's the case, then you get to set the price. You get to decide where you're going to go. So marketing, that is really it. And what I talk about is the right amount of calls from the right customers at the right time. Getting you calls when you're already jammed up really doesn't serve a purpose. Getting calls, just calls from customers who are not your customers, people, let's say, are just price shoppers, that also is not it. So it's those three ingredients that go to it. And we talked a little bit before is knowing what makes your ideal customer. Now, you may have multiple ideal customers. I had multiple ideal customers. I had the homeowner, I had the commercial owner, and I had the industrial owner, and they are different. Different things are going to resonate with them.
Yeah.
And so then the idea about marketing is having a marketing plan in writing that covers the main things, which is a marketing budget is where it all starts. And that I like is a percentage of sales. And so the rule of thumb is 10% of sales would be going to marketing is when you're first aggressive. 4% of sales. So if you have $1 million company, 4% of sales, $40,000 is going to marketing. And now you do need to know what you count as marketing. Is it my fancy 7-power contractor shirt? What goes into marketing? Once you define it, that's the only key thing. What is in that marketing pie?
Yeah.
And so you adjust it. 4% is really just trying to replace the customers that you will lose. And in your particular case, it's not like they're calling you constantly for new cabinetry. Now they may be recommending to you others. If they're a commercial builder or a real estate manager or a building company, like I worked with the guy, they had a recurring company because they liked them so much.
Yeah.
You do have to make certain people happy. And that's really kind of the key thing. The next thing is, how do you go to market? So we call it marketing allocation or drivers. What are the 3 main drivers? That doesn't mean it's the only 3 ways you go to market, but what 3 ways are you using to drive the right customer at the right time to your door, if you will? And so I have, like, for instance, I liked acquisition. I acquired companies, shut them down, put them under my roof. I made more money than anybody else would be doing. That's a skill that I learned over the years and that I've taught.
But you acquired in the plumbing space? You
Yeah.
acquired other companies?
I acquired plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical companies right to the very end. And they're still doing the same thing today. And I've taught other companies how to do it. The reason why it's the best market to do it, just so people are going, wait, I don't want to pay for something. You buy customers that are trained to call. That's why it's really good. You can buy staff that you want or expertise or sell another product that you don't sell today.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great reasons for acquisition, but that's a subject unto its own. But is it a billboard? So you're in a town that everybody has to drive by this billboard today?
Yeah.
That's big. Or is it radio or TV, or is it direct mail? And direct mail still works, by the way.
It
if
does.
you do it the right way, laser focused and testimonial based. Because when you market to me and tell me all the great things that you can do and you're talking, I kind of believe in what you said. But if Dominic is a customer just like me, so he's a residential guy just like me, standing in front of his kitchen cabinetry telling me best guy ever, I'm going to buy into that. And if
Yeah.
I'm working with a real estate builder and Dominic is a real estate builder and I look at him and I'm a real estate builder and he's bragging on him, I'm going to want to reach out to that person. So the traction is really about testimonial based in all the marketing things that you do.
Wonderful. That's the 7 steps. Oh, sorry.
Well, the last thing that people, I just want to get this in real quick. The last thing people fall down on, so they have the marketing plan writing.
Yeah.
They have the marketing budget. They have the marketing allocation. And then all of a sudden they go, hey, Dominic, did you ever run that radio campaign for us? Hey, Dominic, did you ever run that series of TV commercials? The calendar, you have to have a marketing calendar that drives you through the whole year proactively. So we don't run into this where all of a sudden the calls drop off the cliff.
Yeah, there's certain times of the year when people are going to be doing things.
Yes.
There's Christmas time, and then there's summertime, and there's spring, and each of those has a slightly different language, a different approach, a different reason for thinking about cabinets, right?
Yes, and you got to be ahead of that, not trying to catch up to it.
Yeah, no, you'll never catch up to it. I think if I can add something that's important about marketing to reiterate what you said is understanding my ideal customer. What my customer wants is why my business exists. My business, any business, exists to solve problems. And so when I understand my ideal customer and I know what their problem or their challenge is, it becomes so much easier to speak right to them. And you just nailed it right on the head. Hey, Al, if somebody, now people were driving or maybe they're listening to this on the airplane, they don't have anything around. Is there a way that we can get, did you have this on the website or something, or is there a printer?
I do.
Printed version?
I gave the link to you for them to get what I call the cheat sheet.
I saw an email come this morning, but I didn't open it. Okay, so you have the
cheat sheet gives a kind of quick overview to this. If you click on that link and then you enter your information, you'll get this cheat sheet, which is kind of talking to the 7 powers.
Yeah.
And not to meant to be a plug, but I will tell you that I've had all different companies and all different podcasters too, by the way. If you go to Amazon and buy the book, or you can come to my website at the shop, 7 powercontractor.com. You will see that there is you can buy it as a paperback, you can buy it as an ebook, and now you can get the Audible version to listen to the things. And where I begin to unpack it, it's not a giant book. I hate giant business books. If your business book is more than 150 pages, you're really not clear on your idea. So I made it really thin because we are busy.
Yeah.
But it is really good stuff, and it's worth reading more than once. These are the things that'll make a difference for you, because that's the reason I wrote it.
Yeah, great. Well, I love it. Okay, so 7powercontractor.com. And then I'll put this cheat sheet that you attached there in, it'll go in the show notes for this podcast. Now, this podcast also becomes a video, so people can watch this on YouTube. Please do that, everybody. If you're sitting at your desk and you want some entertainment, you can see Al and I speaking to each other here live. Al, I like the background you've got. It's very artsy.
Yes.
You got, no, it's good.
Big money went into the lights and everything.
It looks good.
Thank you.
And but we can hear this as an audio podcast on Libsyn and Spotify and on Android devices, on iPhone devices. But we can also watch it on YouTube. We can go to the website. There's lots of ways to get this. But please, whatever you do, if you're listening, take action. Do something here. And the stuff that Al is talking about really works for all of us in any industry. And the best thing that you can do is exactly what you're doing right now, which is reaching out and finding information like this from people like myself and Al, who talk to other business owners all the time. We're just sharing information here that works. So please take action on that. All right, Al, well, thank you so much. Been great having you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate the opportunity to share some knowledge with everybody.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you all soon.